Football Then and Now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us.
A warmer welcome to Football Then and Now, a nostalgic look at football, but we also look at the current goings-on in the world of football. And my guest is a returning guest. I can't count how many times you've been on this show now, Brady. You might know, but you're back, you're returning. We're going to hit some spontaneous, I'll do it properly, random, spontaneous football nostalgia. We're just going to bring random stuff up on this one, aren't we?
Yep. Bit of fun and banter on this one.
What was, if we take Everton and Villa out of the equation, Premier League, a team that you've always liked watching over the years? I know the Premier League's been going since 1992. Who's a team you've always liked watching over the years? If you had to have a second team, I know we don't like saying that.
Second team's always been Everton. You know that. You and Chris know that. I've always had a close eye on Everton. I mean, when I was a kid, it was United, but I think that was because of my family at the time. And then I saw the light and went with my granddad, who was Villa. I mean, I followed QPR for a couple of seasons. I think that was because of Les Ferdinand, because I liked the way that he played. But, I mean, more recent, I think probably because of the players that they've had, I'd probably go with, like, Brighton, you know.
Mm-hmm.
For a team that came up and had a lot of unknown players that they've sold for ridiculous money. I mean, people talk about the business Liverpool do with players, like bringing them in for cheap and selling them for high and getting players in. I mean, just look at this transfer window, the amount they spent on players, but you look at their net spend, I mean, their profit and loss and their net spend, they've not really spent that much because of how much they've made in sales and things. So I just think Brighton, for the way that they do their business and their playing style. I mean, the players they've got, the players they've had. I think for the modern game, for a so-called smaller team that a lot of people didn't think would last as long as they have, I just think their owner and their board have been absolutely unbelievable. I mean, they've lost some very good managers to other teams. I mean, Graham Potter and the ones that came after. I mean, they're another one. They find the diamonds in the rough. And I think sometimes I do have like a little close eye on them. And there's some teams that come up now and again but go back down that you'll have a cheeky eye on, sort of thing. So, but I'd have to go with Brighton, probably.
Easy on the eye, play the game in the right way, may lose a game, but always stick to that attacking way. They will always play attacking, won't they? Lewis
never
Dunk.
panicked.
Lewis Dunk.
Yeah.
Lewis Dunk, the embodiment of Brighton lad, born and bred, bleeds what great and deserved his call up to the England squad. But in a nostalgic way, looking at it through his career and going back, just the length of time there. But he is Mr. Blue and White, isn't he? He's the white stripes. Yeah. He's one of the Seagulls. He really is.
Yeah. I mean, that guy, he's an old-fashioned defender as well. He's an old-fashioned defender, but he knows how to pick up the modern stuff as well. But like we said about other defenders, past, present, and ones that I think will be for the future, I think they've got to look at these sort of defenders that don't do all the flair and everything, just consistent and just do it old school. throw themselves at everything. I mean, the pinnacle of it, John Terry, love him or hate him, that guy, I think he set the standard for a lot of defenders these days. I mean, when he was at Villa, when we got Tyrone Mings from Bournemouth, I mean, he was obviously a left-footed defender, but we were playing him at centre back, and John Terry came to just took him under his wing and taught him how to be a proper defender. And you look at him now, and you'd think he played his whole career at centre back. And Lewis Dunk's the same. He takes a lot of these modern central defenders, lets them have the flair, push up the field, but will sit back to make sure that everything's covered. And you've seen it over the years. I mean, Vidic and Ferdinand, the partnership they had, you had one that you'd have Ferdinand with a bit more of the flair, and Vidic would just be the wall that would just sit there. And for the modern game, to see defenders still doing what Lewis Dunk does is a rarity in a lot of leagues around the world. You don't really see it that much anymore. They'd rather go for these flair defenders that'll nick the ball, won't throw themselves at everything because they'll play themselves out of trouble. But for a team like Brighton that play the way that they do, they need somebody at the back like a Lewis Dunk that they know is going to be solid enough to get the ball back and get them back on their way.
Definitely.
But yeah, that guy I can see in the future being a coach for them, because I know he is doing his coach. I've heard that he is doing his coaching badges, so I could see him being their manager in the future. Regardless, I don't know what level it would be, whether it would be the first team or if it'd be the kids or the under 21s, but I think he's got a head on his shoulders that the youngsters coming through will listen to.
Brady, because we're going random, and you said about liking Les Ferdinand, the way he played the game up front, QPR, before going to Tottenham, Newcastle, and all that. I've got a player, though, who was absolutely brilliant in central midfield for QPR back in the day, went to West Ham more latterly, was playing for Sven Goran Eriksson for England as well at the time when he had all them top central midfielders, Trevor Sinclair. And I remember an overhead kick in the cup against Barnsley. And he had his dreadlocks at the time. You know, he went quite short. He was quite boldy, wasn't he? More latterly. Trevor Sinclair, he played the game the way it should be played, and he was great. Yeah. And he spoke well. He could articulate himself well in interviews after. But that overhead kick against Barnsley, and he did have some corkers in his career. Yeah. He was. I think he's undervalued, mate. I'm going to say it. Trevor Sinclair,
former Colwyn Bay manager as well, wasn't he?
No, Frank Sinclair.
That was Frank Sinclair. Yeah, sorry.
It's all right.
Too many Sinclairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trevor. I mean, he was a bit of a strange one, wasn't he? He was a bit. I mean, the players that QPR had at the time, when like him and Les Ferdinand were there, I think that's what sort of attracted me to watch them and sort of secretly support them for like a season. I mean, they had that little bit of flair and, you know, sort of stuff that you didn't really see at the time. I mean, it was still coming out of like the 80s and things like, and you didn't have these flair players. It was still the like the Roy Keanes, the down and dirties, Vinnie Joneses, throw yourself at everything, weren't scared of getting into a scrap sort of hard hitting. And you had these players that would just pop up with a bit of a flick or a pass out of nowhere, and he was just that sort of player that you wouldn't expect to do that sort of thing. You'd expect to see that from the likes of the Brazilians or the Spanish at the time, the Portuguese players. like this, their sort of flair players. You wouldn't think of seeing it from an Englishman.
Mm.
And
Mm.
yeah, he was sort of like a bit of a weird one when he got called up into the England squad, because you had all these other English players at the time that you'd think would get the call up before him, but Sven obviously liked his style of play. Did he actually have a style of play? Because he could play either way. He could either get down and dirty, or he could have the flair. He was sort of the in between at the time, wasn't he?
One game that sticks out with him as well was when they went up against Argentina at the Sapporo Dome when they were indoor in that game. Beckham got the penalty and won, didn't they? They avenged the 1998 loss off the back of all the shenanigans from that. And I can remember Trevor Sinclair being in that game. I think he played in all the group games, in the middle. And he had an embarrassment of riches in midfield at the time, Sven, but he gave him a chance, and he's underappreciated. I stand by that. I really do. But known in the same token, he's known, and fans of other clubs respected him. And even later on in his career, had a good run with City. He was nicknamed Tricky Trev as well. I always remember that. But everyone liked Trevor Sinclair. Again, he's another one that I'll put in that bracket, Braids.
Yeah. Yeah. He is one of those where he'd pop up on a quiz somewhere, because he was that type of player that people remember for the random things of the time that nobody would expect a player to do. Like you said, that overhead kick. Nobody would have expected somebody to have tried that from the position that he was in at the time. I mean, you just didn't think about things like that. So I think he was a modern player in an old player's era, sort of thing.
Trying to think of some other people here now, because we can go any which way with this now. This is open season on this topic, and there's nothing. We've had nothing prepared for this either. It's just going to be so random. Striker, a striker that you think was undervalued in the Premier League per se, and I know that's putting you on the spot. Somebody just top of your head, really.
There's been so many.
I'm putting you on the spot. I really am. It's hard because you're talking through 32 years of players.
I mean, one that I always liked, and I still do with his commentary and things. There's probably two. Alan Shearer. He was the old style striker, no nonsense, threw himself at everything, wasn't scared to stick his head in where a boot would be flying in at the same time. I think for him, for the old style, three, I'd probably say. Let's go four. Dion Devlin, he's my favourite player. Ian Wright, some of the stuff he did back in the 90s.
Well, that's when I switched allegiance because of Ian Wright in '93. I had a little brief spell with Arsenal because I loved him, and they did the league and cup double. And I was being a glory hunter at that time, but quickly slipped back over to Everton. But it was a brief 1 year spell.
I mean, you can't leave out Henry.
No. And they're not underappreciated. They're just he was the pinnacle.
Another one for me would be John Carew for us. I mean, coming from Lyon at the time, and we swapped him for Milan Barros. What that guy. I still remember that goal handball they did against you lot, and Chris going mental at me for it.
He had to vent at somebody. Unfortunately for you, the Villa fan that it went in for.
John Carew. I mean, I just remember one game. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. there was a corner and we'd won the header and it was in our box and just nonchalantly just runs over and just shoulders it away. And it was like he was in a training game. I mean, he still goes to watch Villa play now. He admits he's a Villa fan. He's a Villa fan through and through. He will be till the day he dies. He loves the club. He loves the fans. I mean, you see him there at games with Prince William. And for a guy that we got in, for the stuff he'd done for previous teams that he played for, I mean, coming from Lyon, who were, at the time were Champions League proven, season in, season out. I think there'd been did they have Gerard Houllier there at the time? He'd fallen out with him, come to us, and then lo and behold, Houllier ended up at us when Carew was there. I just think a lot of young players these days need to look at don't just look at the big name strikers and midfielders and defenders. Look at the more unknowns, the lesser talked about players, because you'll see how good some of them were. It's just because people don't talk about them day in, day out, doesn't mean that they were bad players or they weren't as hyped as some of these other players were at the time or of the modern day. I think you look at a lot of players that Everton have had over the years, a lot of players that the Villa have had. I mean, when Rooney came through, I remember me, you, and Chris. I think we were at Chris's house and we were playing you, and Chris said to me, keep an eye on Wayne Rooney. He's just going to tear through your defence. And I think it was one of the first ball carries he did in that game. He was running up the left-hand side of the pitch for you lot, and all you saw out of nowhere was Steve Staunton come flying over and just full-blown take Rooney out. And Rooney just popped that back behind because he'd gone over the advertisement boards and he just popped back up. I just remember looking over at Chris and went, yeah, good player he is. Because of Chris bigging him up for the style of play he was, that he wasn't scared of it, getting in at players, and he'd be hard to get off the ball. I think there's been a lot of players over the years. I mean, Rooney Rooney's another one. You have to take your hat off for what he did at Everton at his age, and then going to a team like United at the time and ended up being their top goal scorer. I think was he top goal scorer for England before Harry Kane took it off him?
Yeah, he beat Jimmy Greaves, didn't he?
Yeah, and he's the big name. But you looked at his style of play; it wasn't a lot of like flair and things. It was just he knew how to pick a pass, or he knew when to shoot, or knew when to cross. He was another one who had an old head on young shoulders, because he looked back at a lot of the strikers back in the day. And I think a lot of these, like I said, a lot of these youngsters that are coming through or are playing at grassroots level need to look at these players from the late 80s, early 90s and onwards, because there's a lot of very good unknown players for that time.
Definitely. I've got a random one who lit up for Birmingham for one season. I know we're going to say me bringing Birmingham up. I'm sorry. Mikel Forsell, who was at Chelsea.
How did I know you'd say Forsell? How did I know you'd say him?
The first season on loan, he scored goals and goals, and you got to look at it. It was a great move for him because obviously Chelsea had Heidegger, Johnson, Hasselbank, and Zola, so he could never really get in. He had games at Chelsea, But
Yeah.
that one season in particular, it would be 03-04 at Birmingham, where he went on loan and he scored goals. I know he went on to Germany. Leeds had him later on. I remember him at Hanover in Germany. He had a decent ratio for them as well.
Yeah.
Really good player, but I'm going to pinpoint that one season with him, just a random player. And I remember having him in the fantasy league because we were playing Premier League fantasy league back then. And I had him, Shearer. I think I had him, Shearer and Zola at top for most of it, if I remember rightly. He's one. He just couldn't get in at Chelsea playing week in, week out. That Birmingham run, he was amazing. He was brilliant. He was consistent. He really was. Good player. Good player, him.
I mean, I think he popped up with a couple of goals against us that season. Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few. I think when he went to Chelsea, I think it was it just when they were getting the money in from Abramovich? And
it was 03. He
yeah,
went on loan. He went on loan to Mönchengladbach. Previous to that, didn't do bad. I think it's just his league stats there: 12 appearances, but not cups and all that. 12, 7 goals. Birmingham 03, as you're saying, that was when the money came in when he went. 32 games for Birmingham, 17 goals he got.
Yeah, I mean, you'd seen it a lot at Chelsea at the time. They brought these players in, but they already had like 3 or 4 players in those positions. And unfortunately, he was one of those players that just couldn't get a game, but went to, like you said, went to Birmingham and banged in 17 goals. And I think he went back. Did he go back to Chelsea and they tried it there and it didn't work because it was a different system and it didn't suit his style of play. And I think he was one of those. I think it was I don't think it was more the money for him at the time. It was more Chelsea were going to be the bigger club and one of those, and it didn't work out for him. But it worked out for Birmingham when they got him on loan. And yeah, I think there was quite a few players that went to Chelsea at the time. I think at one point Chelsea could field, I think it was 3 teams with the amount of players they had, and it was absolutely ridiculous.
He had a right mixture. He had a right mixture there, didn't he? Because he went on the continent, then he went for players that were established in the Premier League, Damien Duff, a young Glenn Johnson. Then they went
Joe Cole.
Yeah, they went and got Veron, didn't they? You know, Veron's time in England wasn't the best, was it? Don't get me wrong, but Crespo, Adrian Mutu, so many came in that early time. It's like the money was just getting thrown about, wasn't it? Mega. It was mega, and it took a year to sort it out. And they waited for Jose, didn't they? Because Ranieri went, didn't he? He had one season under Abramovich, and he was gone, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I remember before Mourinho went there, I remember reading. I think it was either the Sun or it was the Daily Sport or it was the Star. It was one of them. And one of the reporters did a thing saying, whoever wins the Champions League, their manager will be the next manager of Chelsea. And lo and behold, the special one won it with Porto. We all remember that run up the touchline and celebrating.
Yes. We do.
But I mean, you look at what he did at Porto at the time, and the teams they beat, and then he went into Chelsea, and no disrespect to any players they had at the time, he trimmed the fat. He knew the players that he liked there that would fit his style of play, his system, and he knew the players that he didn't want there. And unfortunately, Forsell was one of those players that he didn't want that, but went on to not have an amazing career, but he went on to have a pretty good career. As I mean, there was a lot of players that sort of disappeared into the football wilderness.
He's back at his boyhood club, HJK. He was youth team coach between 2019 and 2021. And now he's assistant at HJK, but he was actually born in Germany. He was born in Steinfurt, Germany, but he played for Finland. He played for Finland and he had 87 caps. Not a bad return on the goals here, Braids. 29 goals in 87 appearances for Finland. You know,
I
which
mean,
it's good
that's
going.
not bad. Yeah.
One in three there. You know, Finland. You know, they're not bad. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't put them in the minnow category, but
No.
they come up against the elite international European teams in the qualifiers. You know, I don't think that's a bad return internationally for Finland from him.
No, not bad at all. One player.
Before we go, get it in there.
Before we go,
get it in there.
And it's not because he was Welsh or anything like that. I mean, yeah, it was a plus that he was Wales, and he also became Wales manager. Little hint for you. It was just the career that he had at Newcastle and at EU, I think. Gary Speed.
Absolutely brilliant, mate.
I
He was
remember
superb.
when we were younger. I remember watching him, and I remember my granddad saying to me, "He's the type of player that, like, my granddad and a lot of the older lot like to watch because he was no nonsense. I mean, you had like Roy Keane and players like that who were all mouth, but would sort of back it up as well, but would take it too far. Where Speed was, he wouldn't give you the mouth; he'd just take you out. And he's another player that a lot of these youngsters should look at and emulate his style of play. I mean, what he did on the pitch and then what he did as management, it was unbelievable. What he did for Wales as manager totally changed it round. Took a lot of youngsters and the old heads at the time and mixed them together and bled through a lot of the youngsters. I mean, you had the youngsters like Gareth Bale, Ramsey at the time, Chris Gunter. And he just took his style of play off the pitch and brought it into management. And I used to love watching him play for Newcastle because he didn't take any shit, whether it be from his own players or from the opposition players. And there was no nonsense in him. If the ball needed clearing, he'd clear it, whether he was taking a player out at the same time or not. So Gary Speed, he's always one that I always love to watch.
He played fullback. He played fullback for Wales in games. I remember because he had the number 3. He had the number 3 jersey when we had the Kappa kit. I remember he'd come out as central mid. He would adapt, especially for Wales. You know, when he needed to. There was games where Giggs didn't play. You know, he played a lot. He got a lot of caps for Wales. I'm not disputing that, but there was games where he didn't play. He wasn't in the selection. Gary Speed was there. Okay, United were doing what they were doing. You can kind of understand it. Giggs was brilliant. I'm not disputing that, but Mr. Wales was Gary Speed, and we lost him. We lost him far too young, Brady.
Yeah.
It was so sad in 2011 when we lost him because he was building that Wales team, and I know Chrissy Coleman came in and did superb, but he set the tone, didn't he? He brought it in fundamentally how we were going to play, and it helped us. You know, over the last decade, it's been incredible to see. You know, consistently getting into the tournaments when we hadn't been in tournaments since 1958.
I think a lot of the style of play that Wales play now is the formula that Gary Speed put in place. I mean, you saw Chris Coleman take over from him, and it wasn't that much of a change up in formation or style because it worked. I mean, going back to what we were talking about before with Brighton, the different managers have come in, but the style of play never really seems to change. And that's what Wales is doing now because of what Gary Speed laid out when he was manager. It just seems to carry on. I mean, Robert Page, he did something a little bit different, but he would always go back to the Speed formula. And like I said, taking it from his playing style into his managerial style, you don't see a lot of players these days going from the field to management. There's a lot of players that, I mean, you look at Lee Carsley for what he did for you lot and what he's doing for the England under 21s. I mean, he's another unsung hero that a lot of these youngsters need to look at. Not emulate the likes of Messi and Ronaldo, and because of the styles that they play. I mean, yeah, they are greats. They're legends in their own right. But you look at players like Lee Carsley, Gravison as well. The partnership those two had for you guys. You had the flair, but you had the no nonsense as well, and they could both do. They're kind of like Trevor Sinclair. They could both do both sides of it. They had the flair and they had the no nonsense. And I'm just going off here.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine. We can come back to this. This is the beauty of this show. This is why we coined it then and now. We can go back. We can go forwards. We can do anything. And it was great. It was great just doing random stuff and, amazing, amazing. And what better way to have Craig Bellamy in place, because he was under the learning tree with Gary Speed. All people connected with Wales were upset, but I know Bellamy had an affinity to Gary Speed. They were very, very close. So it's come full circle. Him as a player, now he's doing it, and he'll be using the same fundamentals. And
it is the games that I've seen of Wales since Bellamy's took over. Again, it's the formula and the style that Speed brought in. Because that's the style that Bellamy played under Gary Speed. And it works. In a way, it suits Wales. So, yeah, I think it's just brilliant to say that Bellamy is in charge and doing it the Speed way.
We'll play attacking.
Yeah.
Where Rob Page rested on his laurels a bit and we sat back in games and it became his Achilles heel in the end. We were too defensive towards the back end. Not going to knock his time. We got to tournaments under him and that, but kind of one-dimensional towards the end. It didn't... Bit sour with the fans, I think, towards the back end, but respect to him and the length of time he was in with them. But
I think when Page first came in with some of the first tournaments, we ended up playing underneath him. I think he had the players who had the legs and everything, but then coming to the end of Page's tenure in charge, he didn't have those players anymore. You didn't have the Bales, the Ramseys at full fitness. And I think some of these players that were coming through couldn't do what the Bales and the Ramseys could do. So he'd have to try and change the system. But then, like you said, he sort of got stubborn by the end of it, which frustrated, I think, a lot of the players and a lot of the fans were getting a bit frustrated with it, sitting back, defending when teams were there for your taking. We could be 1-0 up against the team and he'd sit back. You're in a playoff tournament or you're in a qualifier. Don't sit back, because those goals could take you through to the next stage or could take you into a tournament. Because how many times have we seen goal difference be the difference between being in a tournament or being in the next stage to not being in it or not qualifying? So I think a lot of fans got frustrated with with the defensive side, he started playing by the end of his career as Wales manager.
It was just one of them. It was just one of them losing to Iran and stuff. That's not good enough. That wasn't good enough. That was, and they carried on with him for a bit longer, didn't they? Of course, off the back of it, I kind of think he should have gone off at the end of. Then that's when he should have gone. But that's just one of them things. But I'm going to just close out, mate, because we've done our random, spontaneous football nostalgia. Very worthy that as a title, and these will be going out in a few weeks' time. So yeah, we've got plenty of content coming your way, and then leading into the start of the Premier League, of course, when that's all rocking and rolling, Chris and Brady will be on previewing games. They'll be analysing the games in the early portion of the season. Everyone's excited to get back to Premier League action, of course. Braids, thank you so much for doing back-to-back nostalgic episodes. Always a pleasure having you on.
And no worries.
Football Then and Now will be back over the next couple of weeks. And thank you again to listeners and viewers. Thank you to the Sports Social Podcast Network as well for housing our content. And it's well over 600 podcasts and counting now. Chris reminded me of that the other week. And they're continuing to add more podcasts and a lot of football ones on their official Premier League team podcasts on there as well. Just go and have a look at their directory. It's unbelievable. It's fantastic and great. And they're very supportive. And yeah, many thanks to the Sports Social Podcast Network. And we will see you very, very soon for the next episode of Football Then and Now, a nostalgic look at football, but we also cover the current football news and the current goings on in the beautiful game. Take care, everybody, guys. All the best.
Football Then and Now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us.